Hello. Good morning. How are we? Hope everyone's having a nice day, having a good week. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my lights are really bright. Oh. Well, this is what we got. Is this what we're getting today? We're just gonna have to deal with it. A nice little self-care day. It was 16. It was really nice today. Actually, that reminds me, my windows are still open downstairs. Whoops. It's fine. Oh, I forgot. I still have the double alerts on. What? Prawn, thank you for the 23 months. Love that. Love everything about that. Thank you so much. So obviously this is a bit like a, not impromptu, because I did plan some things. I have my little notebook ready. I have some notes for the day. But it's like not what we normally do. But I think that's okay. You know, we talk I talk all the time about wanting to like create space for conversations and education around social justice and like what's just happening in the world. And I will say two things. One, I think because this is kind of what I do for a living also, not this specifically, but like I've had probably 5 conversations today about what's going on. I think subconsciously I avoid having these types of conversations on stream because I spend most of my day doing this kind of stuff. But that's not really like an excuse. So it was something I said I wanted to do. It was something I committed to doing, so we're going to do it. That said, I'll be blunt. I feel like when we try to have these conversations offline, like in the Discord server, I feel sometimes like I'm talking to myself in there. So I'm going to challenge myself to keep bringing up these topics and doing this kind of content. And I'm going to also challenge all of us to engage with it as well, because I feel like also part of why I sort of dropped off was that it felt like nobody was really engaging. And it felt like I would literally just sit here and run my mouth for a couple hours, which is what I do every other day. So I think we all could do more. I can never have anything good to say. You don't have to have anything good to say. And you don't have to say anything. I want to be clear. I don't mean that I feel like there aren't enough people talking in the Discord. What I mean is that it doesn't feel like people are taking the resources and using them. That's what I'll say. And I'm not pointing out anybody in particular, just in general. If you look at the history of that channel, it's pretty much me talking the entire time. Fairy Queen Carrie, hello. Hello. Yeah, so again, let me say, I'm not saying that you all aren't talking enough. And I'm not saying you have to use that channel for chatting. There's a half a dozen channels you can be chatting in on the Discord. What I'm saying is that I want to see us engage more in these conversations and not just when I'm the one bringing them up. That's what I'm saying. So don't take that to mean that I'm saying you all aren't talking enough in the Discord. I don't care how much you post in the Discord. But I just don't want to be the only one bringing up these conversations. That's all. Hi, Sadly. How are you? Sorry, my chair's making a lot of noise today, too. So if you hear random creaking, that's what that is. Not all that. Yeah. Yeah. A lot to be anxious about these days, I would say. So yeah, so again, I'm not saying that you all aren't like using the Discord enough. Just that I feel like sometimes I'm talking to myself there. That's all. So, let me start by saying I am not like at any point claiming to be an authority on this stuff. However, as someone who has a lot of these types of conversations over the course of any given day, I feel like I'm reading about it more, or like paying more attention to it, I think, than a lot of other folks maybe are, just because it's part of what I do. And I think I'm pretty good at finding solid resources and sources of information that aren't made up bullshit, frankly, you know. So that's my goal, is not to like sit here and like be the authority on what's happening and break it all down for you. I have some like resources that I've read and some information that I want to share. As always with these conversations, the focus will be largely on taking action. So we will talk a little bit about what's going on, just because I know there are some folks who maybe aren't as aware or haven't heard or read or anything about it yet. But I always find that in these moments, I feel better when we focus on action and what we can do about it. So I want to make space absolutely for folks to like process or feel what you have to feel, but know that my goal is to spur all 10 of you watching right now, to action. Because that's the only thing that's going to change anything. Oh, I forgot to change the question of the day. We'll just turn that off for today. We will just turn that off for today. Is there any hope, or are they just going to keep knocking down rights and there ain't shit we can do to stop it? Well, I don't know that anybody can really answer that question with 100% assurance. What I will say is this. There's no hope if we believe that there is no reason for hope. I think taking the approach of there's no point is only going to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think there's hope. There has to be. I don't think this is the kind of thing where we can just say, well, it's over, because we're literally talking about people's lives. So there has to be hope. And let's be clear, when we get to like what are the options moving forward, there are several ways that the people who we elected to do this work for us in Washington could easily fix this. It's not like this is a foregone conclusion and, you know, there's no way to restore what is probably about to be taken away. There are several ways to do that. So yes, the answer is there is hope. And there has to be hope. So hi Doxy. So yes, we can talk about how our reps are handling the situation. I want to start by talking about what the situation is. So there will be plenty of time for us to sit here and talk shit about the people we elected. And I understand the desire to do so, but I want to make sure we all understand what's happening first. So let's start with that. Because I don't want this to turn into like a bitch fest. Again, I understand folks need to vent, folks need to let shit out. That's fine. But I want to focus on what we're doing about it. That's just always how my brain operates. I am not the right person to go to if you need to like, this is why my old supervisor and I did not work out super well, because she is such a feelings person that she literally cannot process or get through to like solutions until she's been able to like feel everything she needs to feel. And I'm very much like, okay, this sucks. What are we doing? Go. And so that's just the way I operate. And so since it's my channel, that's what we're doing today. You're a good fairy. I understand. There's a lot of reason to be afraid and scared right now. And like I said, folks absolutely should take whatever time and space they need to process through that. I'm just the type of person that like, I don't take much time at all before I'm like, all right, now what are we doing? And that's just the way I've always operated. So you are 100% fine. Hi, Helena. How are you? Good to see you. So I'll be dropping links periodically over the course of the stream, and mods, if you all can just make sure, I don't think I put all of these links in the Discord yet, the social justice channel. So just as I'm sharing these links, if one of you could make sure they end up in that channel, I would appreciate it. So what happened? There was a leak. I feel like every week there's some bombshell got leaked somewhere by someone somewhere. But this one's from the Supreme Court, which is unique and not unprecedented, but unusual in that the Supreme Court has usually been pretty good about keeping things locked down in terms of how things look like within the chamber, what's happening, the conversations happening between justices and such. It's usually been a pretty protected and kind of walled off process. So it's not particularly common that we get a leak from the Supreme Court. If you are a big reader, or if you are committed enough that you want to read this whole document, it's 98 pages. But basically this was a, wait, this isn't right. This isn't right. Hold on. This is the wrong one. I'm trying to find like the full text of what was leaked. Full document is here. Oh, that is the right one. Okay. Work. So this is the full text of the document that was leaked. Like I said, it's 98 pages. So if you want to weed through all of that and cover to cover it, be my guest. I will not be reading the whole thing on this stream, but if that's something that you want to take a look at, or if as you're reading content folks are putting out about what's going on and they're referencing certain pages of the document, you'll have the full text and you can look at it in its original form if you want. A lot of sources right now, or not even right now, but in general, will take a source document like this and draw their own conclusions from it, and they will do so with varying degrees of accuracy. So it's always helpful, I think, when you're reading somebody's take on a document that you have access to that document too, so that you can read for yourself what actually is in the document and kind of compare it to what folks are drawing in terms of conclusions from it. So again, I'm not reading that whole thing. I probably won't read the whole thing at all, let alone on stream. But there are some key excerpts that I think are really, really important. So essentially, nutshell, it looks like, and I think it's important to stress and emphasize here that this is a draft document. So this is not necessarily the final document. But basically, this is someone's Justice Samuel Alito, who's one of the Supreme Court justices, his opinion on a case that is currently before the Supreme Court. So we expect that the final draft or the final decision or ruling from the Supreme Court will come probably sometime in June, which gives us a good month or so to stress about this before we get whatever the final version of this is going to look like. But this is the first draft of his take on this particular case. And it caused such a stir because he essentially, and it appears that he is not alone in signing off on this, or at least that he's not alone in parts of this opinion, that essentially it's time to overturn Roe v. Wade, which is the law here in the United States that made the right to an abortion legal here. So we'll talk again about like what some of the ramifications or the ripple effects of that are going to look like. What does that mean? Why are there so many folks who maybe aren't particularly concerned about having or being pregnant or needing an abortion? Why are there so many other folks who are sounding the alarm now too, that don't necessarily on the surface appear to have a stake in the conversation around reproductive justice in particular? But again, that's the document in its full form. I will say I think that one of the best kind of like Cliff Notes versions that I've seen or sources that have tried to take key excerpts from the source document has been the New York Times. For better or worse, they do have a pretty good kind of digest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that link too. I encourage you not to just read this. So this is only what I'm sharing right now, but again, do your own research, find sources that aren't that either aren't as biased or that have conflicting biases, so you can better suss out what the core of the truth is. And again, that's what that source document is going to be really good for too. So understand that pretty much any entity that's writing about this right now probably has some sort of agenda. If it's a media outlet, they're trying to sell papers, they're trying to sell subscriptions. So even if they claim to be this kind of neutral, politically affiliated source, there's still some motivation there to write a story that's intriguing and compelling. Not that this needs any help being compelling. However, so this pulls out some specific kind of excerpts from this that are part of why folks are so concerned and so scared. So beyond the fact that overturning Roe v. Wade would be disastrous for literally millions of people in this country, there are some sort of not even dog whistle, because it's not really even that like thinly veiled or hidden, but there's some really scary things that Alito says in this opinion that indicates that this might not necessarily be where this stops, that this could be the first domino, so to speak, in a long series of rollbacks of protections and civil rights that many of us have always just believed were set in stone. Things like same-sex marriage. A lot of folks feel like that's next. Two other ones that are maybe a little bit more obscure or a little bit less contentious, things like being able to teach your child whatever language you want, have them speak a different language at home besides English. There are rights like that that are tied to Roe v. Wade, and we'll talk about how and why. But it's really scary. Access to, well, yes, not directly, but yes. There isn't a court case that made access to hormone therapy legal that would be able to be rolled back in the same way that the court is rolling back Roe v. Wade, but that's been an ongoing attack. So that's not something that's necessarily tied specifically to this case or what's happening right now. But yeah, of course, there have been attacks and folks are trying to limit access to hormone therapy as well. But that's not necessarily the same. It's not the same conversation, but they're tied for sure. So the core of the kind of argument that Alito is making in his opinion centers on this legal tenet of right to privacy. So the reason that the court decided to uphold Roe v. Wade and allow abortion in the United States centered on this idea of having a right to privacy, that people who need or choose to access abortion care have the right to not have the government be part of that conversation or that decision. The reason that it's so far-reaching is that there are a lot of other cases, both before and after Roe v. Wade, that also have used that same argument, that same kind of cornerstone to support their decision. So things like Obergefell, which is the court case that came to the Supreme Court that made marriage equality legal across the United States and moved us from being from that state-by-state model we were at, where we were waiting for each of the different states to pass marriage equality. Obergefell was the case that made it legal across the United States, regardless of what individual states had decided up until then. So that used the same right to privacy argument that Roe v. Wade used. So the concern is, if the reason they're striking down Roe v. Wade, and it does look like this is the case, hinges on the idea that the Constitution does not provide or explicitly give a right to privacy, there's no reason that the court couldn't turn around and make the same determination for all of these other bills, all of these other cases that they've seen, and that we all have considered settled law, including some of the justices that appear to be signing on to this opinion now. So most notably, Justice Kavanaugh. It was a whole thing. Susan Collins said that she spoke with Kavanaugh and that he assured her that he considered Roe v. Wade to be settled law and that he had no intention of overturning it. And now here we are. And now Susan's saying, if this is true, if this turns out to be the decision, it would go counter to what they told me. Well, no shit, Susan. That's literally what we were all telling you when this happened. So I'm hopeful that she's going to maybe take a stance that's a little bit firmer than I would be concerned about this. But I also have lived in the state long enough under her jurisdiction, we'll say, to know that that's probably not going to happen. So that's the kind of core of the argument, and that's why the ripple effect from this could go so far, is because there are a lot of other cases that the Supreme Court has heard and ruled on where that right to privacy was core to their decision. So if we're striking that and we're saying that is not something that the Constitution grants you, which is what the Supreme Court it does. The Supreme Court, I think, for a lot of us, we think it's just like the highest level of decision maker that we have when it comes to legal battles. But specifically, the Supreme Court is meant to hear law around challenging and or interpreting the Constitution specifically. That's why a lot of cases get dismissed or rejected from being heard in the first place, is that they don't necessarily have a clear impact or influence on constitutional law. So the Supreme Court exists to interpret and apply the Constitution of the United States. And generally speaking, more conservative justices, and certainly all of the conservative justices that we have now, are what are called originalists, which means they are folks who interpret the Constitution within the context of it was written hundreds of years ago, but should be interpreted as it was written back then. That there should be no room or context considered. If it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution, then it's not something that you can point to the Constitution to justify or support. So that's the argument here, is that nowhere in the Constitution does it say that we have a right to privacy. Therefore, it cannot be assumed that the Constitution provides for the right to privacy. Whereas folks who use a more kind of contextual approach or view of the Constitution understand that it's a document that was written 300 years ago almost, and that it should be interpreted within current context. I think the most obvious or kind of common example of this is when we talk about gun rights. The Second Amendment simply says you have the right to bear arms. Well, when the Constitution was written, bearing arms looked a whole lot different. Bearing arms meant a musket or, it was a gun that you had to manually reload. So protecting your home, protecting your family from a tyrannical government looked a lot different then than it does now. So an originalist would say, and they do say, well, it says the right to bear arms. Who are we to decide what arms a person can and cannot hold or own? Whereas someone with a more contextual approach would say, well, do we think that the people who wrote the Constitution had some of the guns that folks have access to now in mind when they wrote that amendment? Or would they say that there has to be some sort of judgment or, again, context kind of provided there where, hey, maybe an individual doesn't need a rocket launcher or a tank, even though those might, in the broadest sense or the most original or originalist sense, be considered arms. So that's kind of where we're at. It's this right to privacy that kind of hinges everything. I have a really good, let me see if I can pull it back up. This is a Twitter thread where someone went through and looked at, because in this opinion, Alito references very specific cases and implies that the court overreached in Roe v. Wade by assuming this right to privacy, and that similarly the court overreached in applying that right to privacy to these other cases as well. So in a roundabout way, kind of saying we got it wrong here, and I also think we got it wrong on all of these cases, which opens the door, whether or not he means to further scrutiny or an attempt to overturn some of these other federal cases that we have long considered to be settled law. So this is the thread from someone named AH. So it includes things like Lawrence versus Texas, which was in 2003. The court used that right to privacy argument or the right to privacy tenet to decide that it was unconstitutional to punish people for committing sodomy. So this is the federal ruling that upheld that sodomy or homosexuality, which was really the culture war that was happening at the time, could not be made illegal. You cannot punish, prosecute, or imprison people for committing sodomy. Alito is arguing that the right to privacy is not something that we could use as an argument in that case, and therefore this case should have been ruled the other way. So there is a potential open door there for someone to come along and challenge the legality of sodomy and therefore push to overturn that ruling, which would in turn allow states on an individual level to criminalize sodomy again. The next one listed is Griswold versus Connecticut, which is really around access to contraceptives. So the idea that the case was about a married couple who wanted to purchase contraceptives and whether or not the government had the right to prevent them from doing so. So overturning this case would allow or open the door for mostly individual states, although it could happen at the federal level too, but it would take a lot more support for that, to restrict access to contraceptives. Of course it is, Razor, of course. And that's what I don't think a lot of people understand, is that this is, for all of their flaws and all of their faults, the conservatives and the Republican Party in America is highly organized. And this has always been a criticism of Democrats and the left. Anytime the Democrats are in power, they can never seem to get anything done because they can't seem to organize around a common message, a common platform. There's always a fraction of Democrats that are pulling the entire body one way or another, and they can never seem to coalesce around a decision to actually get anything done. But when Republicans even have a shred of power, and it's rare that they've been in control of all of the branches of government, but even when they only have some power, I mean, right now we have Democrats in control of all of the branches of government except for the Supreme Court. And conservatives still manage to get a lot of shit done because they are infinitely more well organized and they're infinitely more united around what their platform and thoughts and beliefs are. It's a lot harder to get Democrats to agree on a common platform. We don't even have 100% of Democrats in Congress right now who are pro-choice. There is still one pro-choice Democrat in the House of Representatives, or pro-life, I mean, not pro-choice. And we can't even get on the same page about that. So of course it's an invitation. This is all a calculated, concerted effort. It's an extension of what we saw earlier this year in Texas and in Florida, with the attacks on trans folks in particular, but also broader the queer community, where it's all meant to erode bodily autonomy. It's meant to erode civil rights for folks who aren't cis straight white men. I think we're at the point where we can't keep pretending that the Supreme Court is this like monolith of truth and integrity. That ship has sailed. It's really just a third political body. I think for the longest time we were expected to kind of not question the intent or character of the people on the Supreme Court, but I think we've learned in the last few years in particular that you can be a pretty shitty person and still get to be on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is hearing a lot of information and arguments around the January 6th insurrection. We know that at least one of those justices, his wife, was in communication with some of the folks who helped organize that, and that there's a lot of information and evidence that she likely had knowledge that it was going to happen, and may have even been part of the planning. And there is still no mechanism to make him even recuse himself from the case, let alone any conversation about him stepping down from the bench. We can't even get him to say, all right, you're right, I should not be part of the decision on this case. He is going to be part of the group of folks making the decision on that case, even though we know damn well that his wife was part of it. And that's how broken the system as a whole is. So that, again, I understand why folks say like, oh, there's just no hope. But even if that were true, what are we going to do? Do we just sit here and wait wait to die, or for like what? There's no other option. So while I understand that feeling, it's not helpful and it's not productive. So that right to privacy is really the core of the argument in all of these cases. You can look through that whole thread. There are a bunch of others. Interracial marriage is on there. Possession of pornography is on there. again, the Obergefell versus Hodges, which is the case that gave us marriage equality, is on there. Then some like kind of strange ones that don't seem super obvious. The learning their family's language. So if say you're an immigrant family, being able to teach your children your native language is protected because of your right to privacy. That's true, Canary. And I want to be clear too that like this is not here's where I think we can all do better. It's not like today is the first moment where we all should have started paying attention and starting to fight. This has been years coming. If you talk to anyone who's been part of the pro-choice reproductive justice movement, any of them would probably tell you they saw this coming. We knew this was coming. It's long been, really since the Republicans kind of stopped trying to organize around segregation when they realized that wasn't going to be the issue that they could win on, they shifted to abortion. And they shifted to reproductive rights. They shifted to, which kind of starts to broaden and include things like what is a woman, gender, how do we police gender, who is able to make decisions about your body, which is how we start to see some of this kind of bringing in of like trans rights, bodily autonomy. It's all connected and all part of the same thing. So if you're just now realizing that things are fucked, you should have been paying attention years ago. And that's what I mean when I say there's more we can all be doing. I think it's really easy for us to lose track of things because there's just always something on fire. And I understand that folks, I always struggle with this because we see a lot of messaging like, oh, well, make sure to take care of yourself. Self-care is important. And that's true. But I think we miss the part of the message where we talk about who that is for. So I do not have uterus. I will never need an abortion. It's relatively unlikely that I will ever be in a position where I impregnate someone. I am not who that message is for. I am not the one who needs to be sitting out right now making sure to take care of myself. I should be screaming and yelling and uplifting the people who are leading this fight more than anybody else. When we talk about supporting trans folks and fighting back against these attacks on trans kids, it's not cis folks who I'm not particularly worried about self-care for the cis folks who want to be part of that movement. Yeah, of course, eat, hydrate, and get rest, but the emotional toll is so much less for folks who don't have a direct connection to or direct stake in the conversation. And I think sometimes we, well-intentioned or otherwise, use the whole guise of self-care to avoid having to face what actual activism looks like. I don't want to call Susan Collins. I don't want to talk to that bitch. I don't want to talk to any of her staff. I don't want to talk to any of them. And there are times when I don't feel like that's going to actually change anything. And I do it anyway. Writing letters. I phone banked with Equality Florida. I hate talking on the phone. I used to work at a call center. I fucking hate it. And we have to be willing to do things we don't want to do or that we're not comfortable doing. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything done. And I think that we sometimes hide behind self-care as a way of avoiding facing our privilege or owning up to the reality of what we're able to do or what we're capable of doing versus what we want to do. And I think that there are a lot of white folks, there are a lot of cis folks, there are a lot of straight folks who, if they're being honest with themselves, do that. Where we say, oh, well, I'm sympathetic and I want to help, but I don't know how. Okay, you have the whole internet. Literally Google it. There's so many resources right now, so many people offering ways to help. That's not an excuse anymore. It's just too overwhelming. Great, then imagine what it's like for people who are more directly impacted. It's overwhelming for you to talk about what's happening to trans kids. Imagine what it's like for the trans kids. And if that doesn't motivate you, then I don't know what will. Sorry, we're doing a lot of tangents today. I hope you weren't expecting like a coherent, well thought out train of information, because that's not what's happening. But that's how we've gotten where we are, because people don't care until it actually affects them. Nobody cared when it was trans folks who were saying, this is going to affect you. This is starting with us and it's going to come your way soon. This isn't going to end with stopping trans kids from accessing care or cutting their hair or using whatever name they want. It's not going to stop there. And they tried to warn us, and enough of us didn't care. And now here we are, probably about to lose Roe v. Wade, and understanding now how important and how impactful that one ruling was. And now we're all scrambling because we're realizing, oh shit, this is a big deal. So now we're all counting on some dude with a fucking boat who lives in West Virginia to change his mind and maybe decide to support this bill. Because let's be clear, and that's what we're going to talk about next, is what are the options for saving this? How can we maintain continuity of the right to abortion in America if we lose Roe v. Wade? Unfortunately, a lot of it relies on us counting on people who have not proven to be reliable. Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. Those are the people we need to get their heads out of their asses, and they have shown historically to not be great at doing so. But again, there is hope and there are paths forward if the right people pull their shit together and do something. So again, I'm not going to go through all of, there's like 10 different cases referenced in that Twitter thread where it goes through some of the other protections and civil rights that are tied to that right to privacy expectation that could be at risk if and when Roe v. Wade gets overturned. So read that on your own time. But please read it. Don't keep ignoring this, or don't let the gravity of what's happening or the urgency. I think sometimes if you're plugged into Twitter and constantly seeing how stressed out, scared, and afraid people are, it can be overwhelming to the point where we don't know what to do. We feel like there's so many things that we should be doing that we end up doing none of them at all. Don't let that happen. So let's talk about what are kind of the paths forward. What are the options in terms of, sans Roe v. Wade, without that protection in place? What are some of the options in terms of enshrining protection for abortion in the United States across the country? So first and foremost, let's say Roe v. Wade disappears. There are somewhere between 15 and 20 states that have what are called trigger laws. What that means is that they have passed laws at the state level outlawing abortion at various levels. So some of them outlaw it across the board. Some ban it beyond a certain point in the pregnancy. Some of them ban it with conditions or exceptions for things like protecting the health of the parent. Various kind of add-ons or nuances to their bans, but they have some sort of law that bans abortion, and the only thing stopping them from taking effect is Roe v. Wade. So in some of those states, as soon as Roe v. Wade is gone, those trigger laws take effect, which means that abortion would immediately become illegal in those states. I think there are five or six states where that would be the case. The New York Times, I think, posted some graphics that really help break that down. I'll see if I can find that. Yeah, where abortion could be banned without Roe v. Wade. So this really helped to kind of break down what would happen or will happen, perhaps, when Roe v. Wade falls. So I'll go ahead and switch to my gameplay screen. So the 13 states that are highlighted yellow here, so it's North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee, would ban abortion either immediately or super quickly. So they are the ones that have these trigger laws that have been passed since Roe was decided in the 70s that explicitly say we will ban abortion or abortion will not be legal here if the Supreme Court will allow it. So they kick in as soon as the Supreme Court stops keeping them from enforcing it. So in Kentucky, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and South Dakota, those bans would take effect immediately. So as soon as Roe v. Wade is gone, the bans take effect. Other states, it would take, there's like a refractory period or a kind of a, almost like a cool down where it would take a certain amount of time before that law is allowed to take effect. Ostensibly so that any legal challenges or any further legal complications regarding the case can be ironed out, and also to ensure that the states are prepared to enforce this law that they haven't had to enforce before. And then we have 5 states here, Wisconsin, Arizona, Alabama, West Virginia, and Michigan, that have super old abortion laws that became invalidated or became null and void because of Roe, but have never been repealed. So these are states that had bans for abortion in place that were halted by Roe v. Wade, but never repealed. So nobody ever went back in and said, we want to take this one off the books. So technically, if Roe is gone, these laws would take force again. Some of them are Democratic controlled. So Michigan in particular, I think, stands a pretty good chance of repealing that law or undoing that law. Wisconsin and Arizona, certainly much more purple. And I would say West Virginia and Alabama probably will not be revoking those laws anytime soon. The states highlighted here could ban abortions occurring even before fetal viability. So even before you know whether or not the pregnancy is a viable one and that you'd be able to carry it to full term, these states would and or will restrict access to abortion before 22 weeks or earlier, which means you may not have the option if later on in your pregnancy you find that it's not a viable pregnancy. If there are complications that could affect the health of the mother, they may not necessarily be protected. You may be forced to carry that pregnancy to term, even knowing that it's not a viable one. So those are trigger laws. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about trigger laws. These are all states where either immediately or very shortly after losing Roe, abortion would become illegal. And let's go ahead and address it. There's some patterns here. These are almost all very red conservative states. They also tend to be places where we see the highest rates of abortions. We know that one of the most reliable determining factors in abortion rates is socioeconomic status and class. It's not, the argument often is that people are having abortions because they don't want their kids. They don't want to raise a family. They don't want to have children. Honestly, the number one reason and the most common reason folks are getting abortions is that they can't afford to raise children. They can't afford to carry that pregnancy out. And that's why we see a lot of these kind of parallels between poverty rate, between education rate, between race and class stratification, and abortion rate. And we could have a whole conversation about that and the dynamics. I think this would be a great time to remind folks that, because we have the same conversation when we talk about civil rights really in any way. Certainly it comes up when we talk about trans rights and the attacks on trans folks lately. A lot of folks are saying, I've got to get to a blue state. I've got to get to a liberal state where they actually care about me. Let's be clear, in no state in the United States, and I'll look up the graphic for this too, or the link for it too, support for banning abortion. There isn't a state in the country that where a majority of the people support banning abortion. I'm trying to find, there was a map I saw. that I think said that there's no state where the support for banning abortion even rises above 30%. So that there is no place, no matter how red, no matter how conservative, no matter how white it might be, where the majority supports banning abortion. The problem is who's getting to make the decisions and how often those folks do not reflect the actual people that they serve. And we know that's an issue. We know gerrymandering is a huge issue. We know black and brown folks, queer folks, women have all been systemically and systematically kept from the spaces in which those decisions are made. So don't be that person who makes this into a North versus South thing or makes this a blue versus red thing beyond the blue and red folks who are in Congress. But it is certainly not a straight line conservative liberal issue. Even most conservatives support allowing abortion, at least in some cases. So we've been led to believe that this is a much more contentious issue than it actually is. But it's also one of the cornerstone issues to the conservative platform, which is why they push it so hard. And we have currently a Democratic administration and representation in Congress that aren't doing enough to push back. Some folks call it the ratchet effect, where if you imagine like the needle of progress in the United States, and you know, when we've got progressives in power, it moves left, or left, I guess, on the camera. And then when conservatives are in power, they move things to the right conservatively. They roll back protections that we might have enjoyed under more progressive regimes. And the problem is when Democrats are in control, when Democrats have the power to implement progressive radical change, they don't. Democrats more often than not, and this includes Obama. We love to put Obama on a platform and a pedestal and say, this was my liberal president. And in some ways he was, but he also ran, and Democrats do this all the time. They run on a platform of pro-choice, and they talk about how they're going to be a champion for what they call women's rights, but we know it's not just women who have abortions. Hi, Olive. And then they don't do a damn thing because they know it's a hot button issue. Anybody who's kind of plugged into American politics would tell you that if there is a litmus test among Democrats, it's the question of, are you pro-choice? That is the one thing that's supposed to be the unifying thread for Democrats. That's the one thing that will almost always consistently get folks to vote for a Democrat over a Republican. But when it comes to actually legislating pro-choice, we fail time and time again. We elect folks who don't follow through on their promises, and Joe Biden is just another one. He ran saying he was going to codify Roe v. Wade into law so that it wouldn't matter what the Supreme Court said unless the Supreme Court struck down the law as being unconstitutional, which would be very hard for them to do. Here we are, 2 years into his presidency, and he still hasn't done it. And we're at a point now where he has to do it. They have to do it. Congress has to do it. And they're probably not going to. And that's the scary thing. So getting into the point about what are the options moving forward. So say Roe v. Wade is gone. It's probably going to be gone. And again, most social justice and reproductive justice advocates will tell you they knew this was coming. This is not a surprise. This isn't something they didn't know was coming. It sucks, and it's still scary and surprising all the same. But folks have been preparing for this moment since before Trump got elected. I'll also point out, and this might be a controversial take, I'm about to watch that viewer count plummet, but for whatever you think about Hillary Clinton, she has been proven to have been spot on about so many of the things she predicted would happen if Trump got elected. So I hope all the people who voted their conscience because they couldn't bring themselves to vote for someone they didn't like Hillary Clinton, I hope they're all maybe singing a different tune right now, because she's been 100% correct. She said Roe v. Wade will fall if Trump gets elected. And here we are. He put 3 new justices on that court, and we're going to lose Roe v. Wade as a result. We're at the point where people are literally talking about the only option being expanding the Supreme Court, because there's also technically nothing in the Constitution that says we have to have 9 Supreme Court justices. We're at the point where the only option to protect people is to add more justices to this court, something that hasn't been done. That's like our only option in some folks' eyes. Because some of us felt like it was too much to ask that we vote for probably the most qualified candidate that's ever run, because we didn't like her, because we felt like she was shady, or for whatever reason, largely unsubstantiated. People just couldn't bring themselves to vote for her. And so this is why we're here. And so while I will be the last person to say this is why it's so important that we vote, because we did. And this is what's frustrating about Biden's response has been, this is why it's so important that we elect more pro-choice Democrats to Congress. No, girl. We did that. We did that 2 years ago when you told us you were going to put this into law. We gave you control of the presidency and both halves of Congress. There is nothing on paper stopping this from going through. It's his inability and the party's inability to get anything done that's causing this issue. We're not gonna fix it by just putting more Democrats in there. That's not going to fix the issue. We've tried that. It's been 2 years now, and now we're literally knocking on the door of losing this right for so many people. So just voting harder isn't going to get us out of this. Are there people who should get off the bench and be voting? Of course. That's not solely going to fix this issue. We've tried that. So what are the options? So first and foremost, it's again important to remember this is a draft opinion. So this is not official. This is not formally been implemented in any way. This is not a ruling. So nothing has happened to Roe v. Wade yet. It's probably going to. Again, we're expecting the full kind of decision sometime in June, although that could move up given the leak. Who knows what that might do to the timeline. But it's probably going to happen. Yeah, I've seen that too, Olive, and that's bullshit too. But so it is possible that this decision will change, and that what actually gets filed as the formal decision isn't as extreme as this. It's still almost assuredly going to be a repeal or an overturning of Roe v. Wade, but it might not have some of these excerpts we've talked about or some of these references to other cases that leave those open doors for attacks on further rights. Still shitty, still a problem, still fucked up, still totally destroys the credibility of the Supreme Court in the United States of America, but also maybe not as much of a ripple effect as it would in its current form. So that's one potential outcome. Not likely, but it could. There are a lot of folks who believe that this was leaked by a conservative clerk or a justice or a clerk for a conservative justice because they liked how extreme this was. And by leaking it, it sort of locks those justices into taking a stance on this. So since their names are on it, the idea is that this person might have leaked this so that now we know this is where they stood. So moving from this point would be really difficult for them to do. That's one argument I've heard. Who knows? It's not particularly relevant because the outcome's still going to be shitty. But second option, and I would say they're all long shots. Let's be clear. None of these are going to be particularly easy, but in terms of feasibility, I would say of the three options I've heard, this is probably the best bet, is passing the Women's Health Protection Act, which has passed Congress. Joe Biden has said he would sign it. It's sitting in the Senate right now. So the Women's Health Protection Act would make abortion legal by law, which is different than making it legal through a court ruling. It would not, beyond an initial challenge, which would almost be certain, it's not something that can be repealed or overturned by the Supreme Court as easily. And it would require Congress basically to pass a second law negating this one or repealing this one. So it would be a more ironclad protection, and it would still maintain abortion access across the country and keep it from reverting to a state-by-state situation, which is what will happen without Roe v. Wade, without any type of other option put in place. So in order for this to happen, one of two things needs to happen. So perfect world, Senate would just pass it. They need 50 votes technically, because in the event of a tiebreak in the Senate, the vice president votes. The vice president is president of the Senate. So Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker in that case, and she would vote to pass it. So we technically only need 50 votes. However, we already know that in the event that a vote is brought to the Senate floor, Senate Republicans will absolutely filibuster it. And filibustering is basically wasting their time until the bill dies. We've seen it used in the past in state level politics a bit more often than federal. There was an abortion bill brought to the Texas state legislature. If you all might remember, this was a few years ago. Wendy Davis was her name. She filibustered for hours, literally like reading out of books and things until midnight, when the legislature had to adjourn for the session, and the bill ended up dying. It's not a popular tool. It is legal. It's a way for the minority to force their will in a way that they wouldn't be able to simply through a vote. It was designed to avoid kind of like a tyranny within the voting body. The way it gets used is to kill bills that are controversial, that have majority support but don't have enough support to override a filibuster. So we would need 50 votes to pass this bill in the Senate. In order to stop a filibuster and override a filibuster, we would need 60. The Republicans know that there are maybe 50, maybe 51 votes to support this bill in the Senate as it currently stands. There are a lot of folks who want them to take it back and make it less progressive. There's very few limitations on what kind of abortion this bill protects. So there are folks who feel like if we went back and said we will make abortion legal only in these cases and limit the right to abortion as opposed to just giving wide sweeping access, that there are some Republicans who might consider voting for it. Susan Collins is one of them. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska is another one. They're always the moderate Republicans who the Democrats are always trying to woo over to vote with them on things. But there's nowhere near 60 votes. So if someone starts filibustering and they're able to successfully filibuster the bill, it dies because there won't be enough votes to override that. So the only option, and Bernie's already suggested this and gotten a lot of heat for it, would be to get rid of the filibuster. Senate can amend their rules to say that the filibuster is no longer a viable tool. It's been an ongoing discussion. It's something that comes up pretty much any time one of these really hotly contested issues comes up that we know there won't be a supermajority for, a filibuster or a veto-proof cluster of folks, because they don't want to see their bill die. This is where Kristen Sinema comes in. She is a Democrat by name. She is a senator from Arizona. She's bisexual. You might have heard of her because she's one of the openly LGBTQ plus folks in Senate. She has said that she supports the right to abortion. I think with limitations, so not sweeping support. But she's also come out 100 times to say that she will not support ending the filibuster. So even if she supported this bill, she doesn't support getting rid of the filibuster, which would allow the bill to pass. Joe Manchin, similar. He's less supportive of abortion access. Again, he lives in West Virginia. I'm not sure how he keeps getting elected as a Democrat, but here we are. He also does not support ending the filibuster. So that's why the Senate hasn't voted yet. The Senate hasn't brought a vote up for this bill yet because they know it's not going to pass. They don't have the votes to kill the filibuster, and they don't have the votes to override a filibuster. That said, we don't really have time. We know this decision is probably coming in sometime in June, if not sooner. Nancy Pelosi forced a vote on it in the House of Representatives, even though the Senate had kind of advised, the Democrats in Senate had advised, we don't have the votes for this. So if you pass it, it's just going to sit here, or you're going to force us to vote on it and it's not going to pass. But Nancy forced it through. She does that a lot, where she'll force a vote so she can finger point. Again, plenty of blame to go around. But again, that's really our best bet, because it involves, strangely, the least number of people to change their minds. The third option I've heard, and there are a few people who are pushing for this, but full disclosure, I don't really know what the process for this looks like, but the third would be to expand the court. Again, the Constitution doesn't limit or provide any guidance in terms of how many people sit on the Supreme Court. We've had 9, but there's nothing saying that we have to have 9. That's the argument that was used when Barack Obama tried to nominate Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, and Republicans said, no, let's wait until after the election. Their argument was, there's nothing in the Constitution saying that we have to have a full court of 9. And the Democrats were trying to say it's unethical and illegal to rule on any cases without a 9th justice. And the Republicans said, nope, there's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to have 9, so we're going to move forward with 8. And then when the next president comes in, which ended up being Trump, they will nominate who they want. And that's how we ended up with Neil Gorsuch on the court. So there are folks who would say, and they're arguing that, all right, let's play that game then. Add two more justices to the court, make it an 11-seat court, and make them both progressive justices. Now that we have a Democratic majority in both parts of Congress, we have a Democratic president, why not nominate 2 more young, liberal justices who would then flip the court and maintain Roe v. Wade as law of the land? The assumption would be that the vote would then be 6-5. Assuming none of the conservative justices changed their decision. Would that work? I mean, I guess it depends on how much faith you have in the process of expanding the court. And again, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's simply a matter of the president just nominating more justices and Senate confirming them. I'm assuming it's not that simple. Let's find out. Process for expanding Supreme Court. I knew it would be a hot topic right now. So Congress has the power to change. So Congress can just introduce a bill to change. In fact, last year, in 2021, it looks like there were 3 representatives and 1 senator introduced a bill to expand the court to a 13-justice court. So to add, at that point, 4 justices to the court. Clearly that didn't pass, or didn't make it all the way through at least. But that could be a tool used in this case. Because I think what we need to realize is this is just the first of what will be tons of battles like this. I remember saying this through the entire presidency of Donald Trump, that the biggest legacy he was leaving behind was all of the justices and all of the changes to the courts that he was able to get through. So while he was blustering and saying a bunch of stupid shit and getting us called out by every democracy in the world, he was also getting a record number of justices confirmed to lifetime appointments in the federal justice system, including 3 justices on the Supreme Court, who are all relatively young. Amy Coney Barrett, how old is she? She's 50. She could sit on that court for another 30 years. We could have to deal with this for decades, all because of how much power the Supreme Court has, and because he chose the people that he did. And that's just wild. And we're seeing how ineffective Congress really is at responding or checking the Supreme Court. Well, I mean, he was the mouthpiece, but I think we all know who was pulling the strings. So, we could talk about all that too. But so those are the options. We can either hope that the court changes their mind. We can try to put pressure on the right folks in the Senate to pass this bill. Or we can hope that somehow that same Congress expands the court to, I don't want to say balance, but to correct the balance maybe of jurists. But again, I think a lot of folks are going to be hesitant to do that, because then what's to stop the next conservative administration from coming in and trying to just do the same thing? And all of a sudden we've got a Supreme Court that's the size of the Senate and acts just like the Senate. Because let's be clear, the more people you add, the more political and polarized it's going to become. So the more it becomes another legislating body and less so a legal one or a judicial one. So those are kind of like the places, that's where we're at. It sucks. This is not good for anybody. So key takeaways: don't let people frame this as solely a women's issue. Don't let people reduce this just to being about abortion. That is what the case is about, but the ripple effects and the ramifications reach so much further than that. This is not a just vote more issue. That's not going to get us out of this. Don't let the Democrats tell you that that's what's going to fix this. We gave them the majority that they wanted, and they're not doing anything. So we need, and this is why there's this one guy, I can't remember his name, Walker. He's running for Congress in Colorado. He's running against Lauren Boebert, who's also a fucking nightmare. He's gay. That's the first thing he'll tell you, is that he's gay. He's on TikTok, and he's fucking insufferable. I can't stand the man. I'm allowed to say that because I'm queer too, but holy fuck. Literally his whole argument is, I'm gay and gonna unseat Lauren Boebert. And he's a moderate Democrat. But his argument is, in districts like his that are so conservative and red, you can't be a progressive. You can't run on a progressive platform and win. So when it comes to things like universal healthcare, when it comes to things like kind of the more like fringe issues that more liberal or progressive Democrats are pushing, he's not on board with all that. And that's the problem, is that we keep electing folks like that, and then expecting them and the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars of the Congress and Senate to pass a common agenda. He is very cringy. I stitched one of his TikToks, yes. He's fucking, like I said, he's unbearable. I don't know anything about what he actually believes in or what his platform is. I just know that he's gay and he's going to unseat Lauren Boebert. That's literally how he starts all of his TikToks. Hi, I'm the gay guy that's going to beat Lauren Boebert and kick her out of Congress. Thirst trap. Ugh. Fuck off. Oh my God, he's so... Anyway. He's fucking terrible. I can't stand him. He's like that guy who like makes being like the sassy gay friend his whole personality. Hate it. So yeah, that's where we're at. And it's not good. It's really bad. And it's super fucking scary. Yeah, he's terrible. Let's play one. Let's just do it. I think it's just Walker for Colorado. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Oh yeah, his profile picture is just him flipping the bird. Oh, even looking at this man's face, I can't. I can't. Oh, I can feel my blood pressure going up. Let's go. I wonder if I can go see his first one. What was the one that I stitched? This one?
People are like,
You have a moderate policy? You lost my vote.
oh, what vote was that? Was that the vote you were going to give to some Bernie wannabe whose overkill policies are unpopular with 75% of voters, just so you could feel good about yourself until they lose the general election, at which point you'll point your finger and blame someone else? That vote? Oh, honey, your vote got lost a long time ago. Democrats need to wake up. Jesus, in order to legislate, we have to win. Go to walkerforcolorado.com and stop complaining.
Don't go to walkerforcolorado.com.
Woo! I love when people are like,
I can't stand him. I literally want to flip my entire desk right now. There's no platform there. We can't legislate if we can't win. Bitch! If you can't beat Lauren Boebert on pretty much any platform, you don't deserve to win. She's literally a monster. If you can't find some reason to be here that doesn't just center around not being a good enough Democrat or a fucking progressive enough Democrat, why are you attacking other Democrats, first off? Aren't these the people you're trying to get to vote for you? Who is it you're trying... Oh, you want the Republicans to vote for you. I got bad news for you, girl. I got bad news for you, honey. That's all he's got, Canary, is that he's gay and sassy. That's literally his entire personality. I'm convinced of it. All of them. It's all like just so condescending, like no actual substance to what he wants to do. It's all just, hi, I'm gay.
I'm Alex, and I'm the gay Democrat taking down Lauren Boebert in a blood red Trump district. Now, I got absolutely reamed this week for...
Oh, I remember this one.
that if you vote for a far-left candidate in a primary in a blood red district like mine, you're basically throwing your vote away because that person can't win the general. I was shocked by how much hate there was online towards Democrats.
Well, you shouldn't have been, because you're a fucking dick. Oh my god, this goes to what someone was saying earlier about, oh, Stephen was talking about people are like, oh, I was shocked to hear about this. If you're shocked, that means you're not checking your privilege. If it's a shock, that means you're not aware of the fact that other people have had to deal with this shit already. If you're shocked, then you're not in tune enough with your fucking constituency. And you're going to be shocked when Lauren Boebert probably mops the floor with your ass. If he's the one, I don't even think he's the one who's going to win. There's like 4 other people running against him, but... Girl, who are you trying to appeal to? Because this is exactly the kind of person, let's say that this works. Let's say this guy somehow, Alex, that's your real name. Also, this is a great time to make sure to go follow me on TikTok. I'm just going to say that. Anyway, let's say he wins. What's going to happen? He's not going to suddenly start supporting a progressive agenda, because as a member of the House of Representatives, he's going to be up for election in another 2 years. Therefore, he's going to have to keep that blood red, middle of the road, moderate base that he's trying to play to happy. That's what Joe Manchin's doing. I don't want more of that. I don't want another Democrat that has to make all the Republicans like them. That's what Susan Collins is doing. I can't stand her. She's a Republican, but she knows that she's in a purple enough state that she's got to be a little bit more moderate than most sometimes. So she only does it when it doesn't matter. She'll point out all the times that she's voting with the Democrats. She votes with the Democrats more than any other Republican does, but she almost exclusively does so on votes where they already don't have near enough votes to make it happen anyway. So she's voting in with a minority of the Democrats who don't have enough to pass whatever it is they're trying to do. That's what this guy's setting himself up to do, because he's going to be beholden to that same moderate base that he thinks is going to get him elected. Well, that's not who I want. I don't want that. I don't want it. Honestly, if he's going to play the like sassy gay angle, be the most progressive candidate and hope that they're going to buy into you because of your personality, because that's how they got fucking Trump. No one was voting for Trump because of his policy. He literally had one policy, and that was the fucking wall. They voted for the personality. They voted for the, like, attitude that he was bringing. Do that. Fine, be the sassy gay guy, but don't be the sassy gay guy who's trying to drag half of the party he's trying to represent. How's that a good strategy? You're worried about winning the general election. Honey, you got to win the primary first. And you got a bad strat for that. So yeah, he's terrible. I don't even remember what I don't remember what brought us to that conversation. I'm sorry I ranted because I just cannot stand that guy. Oh, yeah, we can't vote our way out of this. So voting for more Democrats is not the answer, even though that's what Joe Biden wants you to believe. You're probably going to start seeing a bunch of ads. If you're on the email list, you're going to start getting tons of emails asking you to donate to make sure that we protect the women's right to choose. Because they're going to make that the like cornerstone of this next election. That's going to be our hot button issue now. When the Democrats have had control for 2 years now. And crickets, honey. So this is there's plenty of blame to go around on both sides of the aisle in this one. And yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric now about make sure that your states are passing stronger laws, or like sanctuary laws are like a new topic, or not a new topic, but a common topic I'm seeing. Like, oh, make sure that your state passes a law that allows for folks to come here to get the care that they need. That's not a solution. And that's not a solution that's going to be accessible to everyone, because we all know, let's be clear, rich folks always find a way to get the care that they need. Rich folks will always be able to afford to fly whoever they've impregnated to wherever they need to go to get whatever kind of care they need, quietly and discreetly. It's poor folks that are going to have the biggest impact here. It's poor folks, it's people of color, it's queer folks who already struggle to access this care, even now when it's legal. They're the ones that are going to feel this the hardest. So I hear folks talking about like auntie networks, where you like claim to be someone's auntie and they're going to come visit you and then conveniently get an abortion while they're visiting you. That's not helpful. Stockpiling abortion pills, not helpful, unless you have a clear, established mechanism for distributing those. All you're doing is hoarding medication, making it that much harder for people to access it who might need it. So I would be very thoughtful about how you would choose to engage, how you choose to support the folks who are most in need at this point. I think as white folks in particular, we love to play white savior and like swoop in with a solution. I'm seeing a lot of white women who are like, I'm going to create this whole network of people who we're doing it at my work right now. All the white women who live in Colorado, they're all like, oh, well, let's put together a spreadsheet, and if folks need somewhere to stay, we can make sure to get them here and get them the care that they need and make sure that nobody finds out about it. That's not what people are asking for. People are already sharing links. Like, here's where you can stock up on abortion medication. Unless you have some place to send that where people are going to be able to access it, you're not helping. You're making yourself feel, but you're centering yourself, and you're making yourself feel like you're doing something, but you're not solving anything. You're not helping the people who need it most. So if you're looking for something to do, I think there are two things that have a more immediate impact that aren't white people doing the shit that nobody asked them to do. That nobody asked us to do. Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of people are getting these ideas. But again, also understand there are issues with those networks too. And that's not a good solution either. So the two things I would say, first off, we need to be pushing our senators. Again, passing the Women's Health Protection Act is probably our best bet to ensuring continued access to abortion for people across the United States. The other two are such incredibly long shots. All three of them are, but this one is the least long shot of the three, I guess, would be how I would frame that. So those of us who are in states where we have senators who are on the fence, either side of that fence. So those of us here in Maine, Susan Collins should have you should have her on speed dial, and she should know you by fucking face and name right now. She needs to hear that this is an important issue. She needs to hear that this is on her, because she trusted Kavanaugh when he said he was going to uphold Roe v. Wade, and he is taking the first opportunity he's getting to overturn it. That's on her. She needs to be part of that solution. If you live in Arizona, Kristen Sinema needs to hear from you. If you live in West Virginia, Joe Manchin needs to hear from you. If you live in Alaska, Lisa Murkowski needs to hear from you. If you live anywhere in the United States, your senator probably should hear from you anyway. This is a slippery enough issue that people like to squirm and avoid taking a solid stance. Now's not the time for that. even the people who live in the most progressive or most conservative states, those senators need to hear where you stand. They need to be pressured to do as much as humanly possible. And I promise none of them are doing enough. So that's the first thing, and that's the easiest thing. It takes literally no time to call your representative, to call your senator. There are plenty of websites that make sending them a letter or an email super, super easy. Do all of it. Email, paper letter if you're able to. Call them. It does not take long at all. Most of them are either staffed by like interns, or they're just going to send you to a voicemail system either way. Do it anyway. Do it anyway and do it often. There's no limit to the number of times you're allowed to call your senator. Keep doing it. The second thing, find local abortion clinics and donate to them. They're the ones who are going to feel this hardest. I'm already seeing folks talking about trying to get fundraisers up and running for Planned Parenthood. And that's not to say that Planned Parenthood doesn't do some amazing work. They really do. But like when we talk about any of these kind of like pop-up urgent situations that happen, no problem, Canary. It's these larger organizations that tend to get flush with cash. People donate to organizations like Planned Parenthood, like Human Rights Campaign, and they're not prepared. They don't have the tools to get the money to people in the states that need it. These local abortion clinics have been doing that for decades. Some of them are funded through federal funds, so they're limited in what they're able to say or do. We're lucky here in Maine. We have a local feminist independent clinic that operates solely on donations. So they're able to be very outspoken. They're able to take a super strong stance and be a big leader in this movement. But they need our money and they need our help to keep that going. So I know one of the things I'm doing is reaching out to them. They do primary care now, which I didn't know. So I'm going to reach out and see about getting my primary care through them, because these types of clinics, when they offer like a sliding scale. So for folks who are uninsured or underinsured, they can pay less based on their means. For folks like me who are very well insured, I've got great insurance. I can help by using my insurance there. The money that they make from my insurance is enough to help 3 other people who are uninsured. And that's straight from their website. So if you're insured, be thoughtful about where it is that you're getting your care from. If you've got a clinic like that in your area, the one here, it's called Mabel Wadsworth. They're amazing. You can help simply just by getting your care there. They're also super cool and like very trans, non-binary, gender affirming and cognizant, to the point where they will make you feel comfortable. I know for a lot of folks, that's the idea of going to a doctor is scary just because of dysmorphia issues with dealing with being touched or having to have conversations about body parts and functions and things. Yeah, and that comes right from, I'll pull it up, their website. Mabel's is, even if you're not in this area, I think they're a great model for other clinics to operate on too. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Primary care. I can't remember where it was on their website that I saw. But it said for each private insurance patient that they see, it allows for them to support up to 3 others who have to use their like sliding scale. I can't find it, but so there are things we can do, and it's just about taking the time to learn and commit to doing those things. So that's what it really comes down to. Pay attention to Twitter. There's a lot of information flying around on Twitter right now about organizations and clinics that are supporting folks, particularly in these deep red states that will immediately lose access to abortion. They're working to find solutions. They're working to provide care as long as they can, right up until they're not allowed to anymore. There's no shortage of people and places that need your help. What I don't want us to do, and I'm just as guilty of doing this as all of us are, I'm sure, it's really easy to just retweet shit and feel like that's enough. I don't know how else. We just spent an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, going over how much damage this is going to do and how much damage this has the potential to do. I don't know how else to make y'all care about it. I don't know how else to impress upon you how serious this is for all of us. This isn't going to end with abortion. It is almost definitely going to come to marriage equality. It will almost certainly have further impacts regarding trans folks. It shouldn't take that to make us care about it, but if that's what it takes, then that's where we're at. I'm not going to make people love to make the argument of, well, we all know someone who's had an abortion. Yeah, I shouldn't have to have known someone who's had an abortion to care about this either. Like, I'm so over the need to convince people to give a shit about other people. I don't care who I know who's had an abortion. Do I want to be there for them? And if any of you have and need to talk about it, am I someone you can reach out to and we can have that conversation? Absolutely. But it shouldn't take knowing someone to give a shit. I shouldn't have to say I'm doing this for XYZ person. I shouldn't have to say, as a queer person, this is important to me. I should just say, as a human being who gives a fuck about other human beings, this is important. And it's frustrating. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir a lot here. But it's so fucking frustrating that it takes so much persuading to get some people to give a shit about other human beings. So those of us who do give a shit without having to be convinced, we have to be working that much harder because there's so many people who are already tapped out of this conversation. And we can't afford that. So it's on the rest of us to do the work. So that's what I got. I will open up the floor, I guess, if people have questions. I know some folks want to talk about specifically how our elected officials are handling things, what's happening kind of on the ground where you are. I know here in my area, they just had a rally today at one of the local city halls to just protest what's happening. I think they were marching on Susan Collins has an office not super far from me. And I think that they were trying to put some pressure on her to do the right thing. So that's something, Do any of these individual efforts or any of these individual steps fix it? Probably not. But maybe they will altogether. I remember... Actually, I think I still have it. Hang on, I'll be right back. I remember when I was in college, when we were still fighting for marriage equality state by state, I remember feeling the same way. I think a lot of us feel right now. I remember thinking, this is never going to happen. This was after Maine had already voted by popular vote, by referendum, not to allow marriage equality. The question was worded in a weird way, and the campaign wasn't well run. But that's why I wanted to volunteer for the second campaign when they tried again. And I remember volunteering when I was in college. So this was, 10, 12 years ago. And thinking so often, because I was talking to people on the phone, knocking on doors, and talking to people who all just seemed to so walled off. And I remember thinking, this is not going to happen in my lifetime. I remember thinking, we're not doing this for me. We're not doing this so that I can marry who I want someday. We're doing this so that eventually, our kids or our kids' kids will have that ability. And then things it happened. Slowly, steadily, and then all at once, really. It happened. So I kept it. I don't know why I kept it. Well, no, I guess I do. I kept one of the yard signs. I kept one of the yard signs from the campaign, and I guess I never really understood why I kept it, but in moments like this, I guess I do remember why. Because I think about that, and I think about like how far away it felt for us then, and I think we're there again. Right now, yeah, it feels like the last thing that will happen is that any of these people are going to wake up, and that any of these people are going to suddenly start caring. And I think it's important to remember that there have been a lot of moments like that. There have been a lot of people who have felt like our efforts were in vain, or that we weren't going to see the fruit of all this work. So I guess I would say, like, if we can do this in rural ass purple Maine, then I have to believe that we can do this and find some solution to ensure that folks continue to have access to expanded access. Let's be clear, because right now access is subjective. Not everybody has the same access. I'd love to see expanded access to abortion, but certainly let's keep it legal. So I guess that's what I would like maybe leave you with is, I know that it feels so so far from possible for a lot of us. But I think if there's anything we've learned from being part of really any social justice movement, it's nothing is out of the realm of possibility if we are united enough, and if we are if we're all pushing in the same direction. And that's what we need to do. So if you're not pushing, here's your invitation to join us and make the change that we need. So that's all I got. What questions do you all have? Are there parts of this that maybe weren't clear, or that you want to like dig into a little bit more? That's really all. I'm not going to play games or anything. I'm going to wrap up. I have a super fucking long day tomorrow, so I'm probably going to go to bed early. But again, I wanted to just make space for folks to talk about this, and one, learn more about it for those of us who maybe struggle to understand in the like constant bombardment of information that social media is. It's sometimes helpful, I think, to have someone just help walk through it. Good. I'm glad to hear that, sadly. Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, there's no sugarcoating it. It sucks. And it's frustrating that there are people who see all of what's happening. They see the pain this is causing. They see the harm it's causing, and can just look the other way, knowing that they have the ability to do something. I can't imagine being Susan Collins for a million reasons, but I can't imagine looking at what's happening, seeing people literally begging her to do something and choosing not to. That blows my mind. There's no amount of money I can imagine someone offering me, or no amount of power or campaign contributions that I can picture someone handing my way that would let me look at people who are literally afraid for their lives and say, too bad. Hi, Arel. Good, I'm glad it was helpful. I understand the pain because better than me. I don't know if it's that. I think it's easy to believe what we want, So I believe that some people, not all people, I think for some people, yeah, they're just shitty people. But I think that for a lot of folks, they really do believe they're protecting children. They really do believe that they are looking out for the voiceless or whatever, fucked up language they use to justify it. Which is why we hear so many folks who make the argument like, okay, you're pro-life, then let's also beef up childcare. Let's beef up healthcare for people who are having kids. Take care of that child throughout their entire life, not just when they're in the womb, because if they genuinely cared, that would be the next logical extension of that, wouldn't it? Yeah, definitely Razor. I think for a long time, we always, I know I fell victim to this all the time, would always tell myself like, well, the conservatives are all old people and they're all going to die off. And eventually there'll just be more progressives because young people are all progressive. And we're learning very clearly that's not the case. And so I think for a lot of us, we just felt like, oh, things are naturally going to shift. And in a lot of ways they are. But social change and political, legal, policy change do not run the same course. Which is why I say there is such little actual support for banning abortion, but that doesn't necessarily matter because the people who pass the laws, the people who are tasked with policy, have chosen to make this a cornerstone of their platform. So that's the thing is and for a lot of us, because we live in maybe more progressive communities or in more progressive parts of the country, we don't see how divided we really are. We don't see how these things impact folks because we're in our little bubbles. I'm seeing it even now, and I'm not even in like I'm in a pretty conservative town now. Where I was probably the second most progressive town in my state, I would say. Moving from there to here, it's like the same size town, but everybody here is conservative. I'm even like finding myself kind of like, oh, not everybody feels this way. I don't walk around in drag outside. When I was living in the town before, I would literally walk up the street in full drag and not worry about it. Here, I feel weird going from my door to the car in drag because I feel like someone is watching me and they're going to judge me. So that's what I have. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. But again, please... I thought I had a button just for the Discord link, but I don't. Go ahead and join the Discord. We have a channel in there called Resources for Social Justice. All of the links that I've shared today are going to be there, and we can continue the conversation there as well. Like I said, this is not going to be the only time we talk about this, and I'm committing to making more space for these conversations. I've kind of been getting a little burned out on gaming content anyway, so maybe we shift a bit more toward just chatting stuff for a little while. Until I find another game that I get like super fired up about. We'll see. I'm probably going to put this up on YouTube as well, just because Twitch doesn't save VODs as long. So yeah, that's what I got. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, it's hard, I think, in the moment to know what to do. And that, I think, sometimes keeps us from doing anything. So if you take nothing else away from this conversation, please know that doing nothing is the worst thing you could do right now. Find the places where you can make an effort and make a change and do that. Because there's so many people that are counting on that. So anyway, again, thank you all for hanging out. I appreciate it. I'm not going to raid. Just because I feel like we've created some very like down energy, and I'm not trying to bring that into someone else's channel. I know there are a lot of folks who are intentionally not talking about this stuff today. because they want to just create space for folks to decompress and focus on other stuff. So please go watch other creators if you want to, but I'm not going to raid. I think I'm just going to go ahead and end stream here. But thank you all again for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. I'll be live again on Saturday, if not sooner. We'll play some games and maybe do some more just chatting stuff. So again, make sure to use that channel in the Discord for any topics that you want to learn more about or that you want to share. I love you all so much, and I will hopefully see you all in the Discord. Bye.